the archive, some of the kinds of photographs we have, the various collections that we have, and how you can find photographs that are in our collection. You're looking at the title screen, and there isn't a day go by that I don't find a new picture, and I say, today, this is my favorite picture of the day. And it goes on all the time here. But I really like this picture. It's a photograph of the Fisher Brown Insurance Company in Pensacola, Florida. It's a carefully posed picture for the photographer. But what I find very, very interesting in this is that nobody has a typewriter except the secretary. She's sitting in the middle of the room under a portrait of a woman, and all the guys look busy. And the one on the left, he has a portable fan to keep cool, and it's plugged into the light socket, uh, which I found that very interesting. So anyway, that's a good example of, of our photograph. So what we're going to do today, I'm going to talk a little bit about our collection and the items that we have. To understand what photograph we have, I need to cover briefly what our collecting interests are. Um, our collections here, University Archive, West Florida History Center, we specifically cover the 10 counties of the Florida Panhandle. We'd also cover this area before it became a territory in the Spanish and British colonies of West Florida before 1820 that stretched across Mississippi, Alabama, a little bit of Georgia, and of course, western Louisiana. And so I have this slide here to kind of give you an idea of all of the different kinds of things we have. Basically, they all boil down to the same thing. They're information. Information can be visual, it can be written, it can be published, it can be anything along those lines. Now, we because we are limited to our limited collection to that, you won't come in here and expect to find pictures of Orlando, Florida, or Charleston, South Carolina. That's not to say that sometimes we get a few things outside of our region, but for the most part, we try to concentrate on our area. Now, how do we get collection? Well, basically, we get collection three ways. Number one is organizations and individuals will donate their papers to us. That could be their family paper, it can be the records of their business, it can be their parents' record, their grandparents' record. All those things are kept together and as a collection. So if their grandparents lived in Fayetteville, Ohio, and they had photograph albums that came down to the family and they have Ohio pictures in them, yeah, we would have some pictures from that area. But again, we really tend to concentrate on this area. The second way we get materials is we solicit them. We go out and we ask for donation. We approach families and individuals and organizations to say, look, your history is important. We'd like the opportunity to preserve your family, your business, your organization, your church, things like that. And then the third area, we do purchase a few things. We do purchase books that are published about West Florida, and we also subscribe to newspapers and try to collect any publications in our area. This means that there's a lot of pictures that get published in books and newspapers and serials, and so the collection, visual side of the collection, can get larger and larger. This is kind of a view of our stack. To mention some of those, the runs of newspapers and also the book collection. And magazines and periodicals are also a source for photographs. They're a source for photographs and illustrations and things. These are Pensacola Visitor magazines from the 1950s and 1960s, and we often find people looking for pictures of a certain building or a certain event or whatever, and we will turn it up in some of these kinds of publication. Now, in the archive, we organize our photographs. We don't separate them out. They are within a collection, and a collection in our archive will have an inventory, and an inventory may describe the materials in a folder or the material in the box. Sometimes they might be individual items. This is an example of a family photograph album we got. The photographs were absolutely falling apart. Most of them are not marked as to who they are. we were told that these were the three family from Baghdad, Milton, and Pensacola, Florida. The album, like I say, was just totally falling apart. But we kept the pictures exactly in the way that they exist in the album. And then we noted anything we could about the picture. If there's a name, the photography studio, if there's any date on the picture, that type of thing. We get lots and lots of pictures that are not identified. That's one of my pet peeves. I tell people over and over again to please write on the back of a picture what it is, who it is, and the kind of event. You can search what pictures we have online. I will admit that our photograph holding we have are so extensive that I'll be surprised if we get a good quantity of them ever online. But we do have search bars on the library homepage, and you can search our archive-based repository or our Islandora repository. They're a little tricky to use. Archive-based, you kind of go down into the collection, and you'll finally get to a screen that have a little red box on it that says digital object. And when you click on that, you get the picture that's been scanned and put online. Islandora is a little differently, but again, it's the same. It's the same type. It's better for visual material, and we can put little tiny images of the pictures on there, and people can quickly scroll through them. This is a photograph of a glass plate negative. Most of our pictures many of our pictures exist just as a photograph. And this one is really kind of neat. It's at downtown Pensacola. We do, and it's an example of a, and it's almost impossible to catalog this picture to describe all the things in it. People will come in and say, well, I want a picture of this church, or I want a picture of that building, or whatever. But this is a view of Halifax Street looking north. The Methodist Church is on the far left of the picture. The old county courthouse is in the center, and the Presbyterian Church, I believe, is there on the right. Now, when we get loose pictures from people, we file them. We file them in a reading file. And we have a reading file of pictures that are organized by county, by city, and by type. And so we get a lot of requests for the kind of thing. But most often, photographs stay in a collection. So if it's a scrapbook of a family or the photographs of a business or something, they stay together as a collection. They're not separated out. Some of our earliest pictures are daguerreotypes and ambrotypes, and they're quite charming. I really like this little picture of this little girl. These are about the time of the Civil War or earlier. Many are not identified. Now, the tricky part is many of these early photographs, this gold around the picture is actually a foil. It's a pressed foil. It can be carefully removed. I don't recommend people do it. It can be carefully removed, and sometimes there'll be a little piece of paper in there, maybe with the person's name or something like that. It's very rare, but occasionally that kind of thing happens. We also have some stereo cards. People I talk to, I mentioned Viewmaster Reels, and some of my students don't know what Viewmaster Reels are. They give you a three-dimensional picture. And our Victorian friends in the 1890s, this is what they used, and there are three-dimensional pictures. There have been a couple for Pensacola, some for the Naval Air Station. Most of the Florida ones are other places. You would buy these as souvenirs in St. Augustine and other places and take them home with you. Another kind of collection of visual images we get are slides. And slides are one of the problems with slides and with old photographs is that when you study photography, the plastic, the slide negative, for example, the material for plastic, and the ink is on the plastic. There's nothing to absorb the ink. So at a microscopic level or atomic level, if you look at the ink, it's still wet. It never totally dries. And so because of that, the chemicals in that ink will slowly decompose. And that's why you see a lot of early slide. They've gone reddish. They've gone a reddish tinge. Most often happens with ectochrome and some of the others. And it's because of the deterioration of the ink. Now, this is one of our little prize tools. This is a specially rigged up slide projector. It uses LED lights. If hooked to a 35 millimeter camera, which is hooked to a computer, we can put all the slides in a carousel, set it on it, and it will automatically advance and take a digital picture of each slide and move it to the computer. And so that saves a lot of, another way of doing slides, of course, is laying them on a flatbed scanner. But you've got to have a flatbed scanner that has a light in the lid. And most flatbed scanners you see don't have that. But we do have several of those down here in the archive. And so we can do slides, and we can do transparency, and we can do negative because of that. But I really like this little slide projector gadget that we have. It makes it a little easier in transferring slides. Now, sometimes photograph will be loose in a collection. We have a group of a scrapbook called the Murphy paper. The Murphy sisters were teachers, and they seem to have had a hobby in the 1930s and 1940s of going through the newspaper and clipping anything that caught their fancy. And they built up these scrapbooks, one on Pensacola and one on Florida. They saw something about Florida, they'd clip it out of the newspaper and paste it in the scrapbook. I've got these piles of scrapbooks. They say Florida 1, Florida number 2, Florida number 3, and the Pensacola scrapbook. The interesting thing is one of the sisters ran all the scrap metal drives in Pensacola during World War II, scrap metal and rubber and other kinds of things. But she got a lot of pictures and articles about that. But one of the things we have with pictures is trying to figure out where this one was stuck in one of the scrapbooks, and the glue from the clipping on the opposite page stuck to the photograph, and so that's why it's slightly damaged. And it's an interesting picture, and we have to figure out, with a picture, we have to figure out, well, sometimes we can make a guess when it was taken. Sometimes we can look at the models of the car, for example. That's a lot of research. I need some old car specialists here, and we have one in the library, and I may bother him once in a while with an old picture. But so we look at a picture line and we say, well, what can we see in this that tells us what it is? Well, if we look real closely, next to the phone pole, you can see Christ Episcopal Church, Christ Church on North Palafox. And so therefore we know this is a view of Palafox Street looking north from downtown Pensacola, probably from Garden Street. And for clues like that can help us understand a little bit of a picture and where it is and what it shows. Another interesting collection of visual things are postcards. We get a lot of gifts of postcards, and sometimes my friends at other archives will, when they're cleaning out a collection, will send me their Pensacola postcard. Hopefully I can send them something from North Carolina or whatever archives it is. But we do, among the archivists, we do exchange some of these things, because postcards are bought here and they're mailed away, and so they're not here, they're out there. They're wherever they've been sent to across the United States. The little thing on the right, the postcard on the right, this is a motel on US 90 or US 90 downtown. And what's neat about this is this has an architecture in it called Populux architecture. Populux architecture was an architectural period in the 1960s. We were going to become real modern. Sometimes some people call it the Jetson style architecture. And this is an example of the motel that has it with these large flat, I don't know what you call them, large flat flying saucer, golf tee kind of thing. And this was a very common part of that type of architecture. Another kind of file pictures we get are aerial photographs. The Florida Tax Department, the Florida Department of Agriculture for years have sponsored flyovers of Florida taking pictures of land. They use it for assessment purposes, they use it for environmental purposes, and so forth. And they actually become a historical record of topography, of the changes in geography, and so forth. Um, we have quite a lot of these. We actually had to buy special heavy-duty file cabinets because the photographs in a drawer are extremely heavy, and some of the cheap file cabinets would buckle under them. Some of the and even kind of pictures and things can be very helpful. This is an early picture. This is a nice picture of Gulf Breeze, and we are looking from what would be called the Bob Sykes Bridge, and the upper part is the 3 Mile Bridge, is the bridge across Pensacola Bay. And you can see Gulf Breeze is not as fully developed as it is now, but it's on its way. Neat kind of photograph. Now, we have been lucky in getting some collection, entire collection from some photographers. One of them we have is called the Bell Collection. The Bell Collection are photographic negatives on glass. We've been able to track the photographer, Dr. Bell. He opened his own studio around 1916. It goes through the 1940s, we believe. Each one of these little boxes weighs 9 to 13 pounds a piece because of the weight of the glass negative. And all of these negatives, the only reason I took these negatives was because they were identified. Okay, that was the great thing about it. And so therefore we have been able to scan these and put them up online. There's 24,000 images in this one collection. There are some catches to it in doing history, for example, and that is the names on the envelopes is the client. And so if Mrs. Smith dragged her 2 children to the photographer to get pictures made of them, the negatives have pictures of the children, but the envelope will say Mrs. Smith. And similarly, if she took her husband there, the picture in the envelope will have a name on it. And you hope that the name on the envelope is the wife or the mother, but it could be an aunt, it could be a grandmother, it could be somebody else that took somebody in to have their picture taken. So there's a historical, little historical issue here, but these are very useful, and we actually have them online. They actually can be found in 2 different sites. And we put the pictures up, and we've also put the names that came with the slide. These glass plates were put in a camera where you would take one picture and then the photographer would slide the thing over and take another picture, so that each glass plate has 2 images on it side by side. And that's why when you look at these, there's 2 images. Maybe the person changed between the time the photographer, and even under one of those sheets or whatever to make the glass plate negative move. Another wonderful collection we got, which we've been slowly working on, is the Malinowski Collection. Ray Malinowski had a studio across from the public library. He operated from about 1960 to 2000, 2001 or 2, somewhere in there. He had a studio and he took studio picture, but he was a commercial photographer too. And developers would hire him to hang out of helicopters and take pictures of swaths of land or their buildings from the air or so forth. And each of these are negative. They're little black and white negative. And as you can see, I pulled one envelope out here and it says University Mall grand opening August 28th, 1974. And of course, there's not too many of us now that remember it was called University Mall before all the changes in it. And that's one of the problems I have in having students help me work with these, because the envelope the name of the envelope don't mean anything to them because uh, the bank keep the same building and change their name and things like that. But we're slowly working our way through there. We estimate 50,000 pictures. I could be way on a low end of that one. The nice thing about Malinowski in 1968, the Historic American Building Survey came to Pensacola, and what they were doing is they were making records of all the oldest houses in Pensacola, and they needed photographs, and Malinowski got the contract. So he got to go around and take pictures in 1968 of all the historic houses that they were adding to the thing. So we have pictures of what these houses looked like now 50 years ago. Before restoration, oftentimes, or to show any changes in them. They're pretty neat. Another collection we got was the Stone Studio. Stone Studio in Pensacola had a contract with the school board. They would go into schools and take pictures of all the kids, grade school, junior high, high school, uh, Catholic school, private schools, and that kind of thing. Eventually, they slowly moved into digital photography. I'm not sure the company is still operating today. However, they did donate all of their negatives, or at least a good portion of them, to us. All of these are are student negatives. They're not, we've not found any that are, say, weddings or things like that. But they are, and we have, Judy, mute your microphone, please. Thank you. Anyway, we've got some indexes to them, but we haven't spent a great deal of time with these as of yet. The other kind of thing that we're interested in photography here is, of course, the history of the University of West Florida, part of West Florida. And so we get pictures like this. This is pretty cool. This is 1966 or early 67. Buildings 10, 11, and 12 are complete in it. The library, John C. Pace Library, is under construction. You can see it over there without walls on it. But amazingly, the parking lots are completely finished. And there's plenty of parking in 1966 or 1967. Sometimes photographs come to us with very little information, and they're always very interesting because they're just fun to look at. This came labeled Sanders Family. We don't know anything more about it. I'm marveling at this lady in the middle, her hourglass figure and the Victorian clothing and all that. Our best guess is 1900. It could certainly be earlier, but we also look at the furniture and we look at the settings in the background. It could be 1890s as well. That's one of the problems with pictures is sometimes we just simply have to guess what date we think it is. This is an example of something that's not West Florida, but part of another collection. In the 1890s, photographers began to sell photograph cards as souvenirs to tourists. And this one is Mexico City, number 23, showing native women washing clothes as part of a souvenir shed at Mexico City seen in the Walter Ressler Papers collection. He may have made a trip to Mexico, and this was a souvenir that he picked up. So we, like I say, we do keep some of these things, collection together. Picture postcards are very nice. From about 1900 into about 1920, when you took your film in to be developed, you could have the option of having them developed as a picture postcard, and that way you could mail it to somebody. Usually there's only one of them because they're actual photographs. And so this is a postcard, and it says Milsine Century, Florida. And this is actually the Alger Sullivan Company at Century, Florida. So we have an idea of what some of the buildings at that site look like. Now this picture came to us just like this, and identifying where it was really easy because the glass plate windows have the Milton Gazette newspaper printed on them. The next guess is what is the event? Why are they all decorated up for? And we thought maybe 4th of July. There's a lot of hairy clothing on that little girl riding in the back seat of the car. But the picture said Mardi Gras. and that would be February, which is rather cool in West Florida. And the year very much more difficult. Maybe the early 20s, we might try to identify the car at some point. Um, and but we don't know because there's just not enough information. Whoever took the picture and kept it didn't write enough information on it. Sometimes we get lucky with the name of the photographer. This is a card photograph, sometimes called a cabinet card photo. And this guy named G.W. Shear was a photographer in Defuniak Spring, Florida. And he took a lot of pictures around Defuniak and the Chautauqua and other places, and he would sell them. And so this one says the south side of Chipley, Florida. Usually the south side would mean south of the railroad track, the L&N railroad track. And so these are really, they just take us back in time and give us a sense of history and where things are. Sometimes we can turn up panoramic photographs. This is a copy. I believe the Library of Congress may have the original. Usually it would be taken by 3 different cameras, and then you would overlap your negatives and to produce these kind of panoramic scenes. Historic photos are really important to us because sometimes they help us look at changes between a structure. This is a photograph of the Hall of Brotherhood, the Chautauqua building in Defuniak Spring, Florida, which was built in 1906. And this shows how badly the building had run down in 1938 after the Chautauqua ended. And then in 2008, repainted, restored to some degree, and how gorgeous it is. We can also get digital photographs, and so a lot of people will bring us digital photographs or send us photographs. I took these pictures, and this is a house in Pensacola. It's called the Roundhouse. It was if you study Hollywood history and Hollywood architecture, one of the names you will come across is Lautner, John Lautner. He designed many famous and large estates and houses in California. Today they're classic. They sell for the multi-million-dollar houses and all that. And his cousin, yes, Lautner, lived here in Pensacola, and he wanted a new house. So Lautner designed this house for him. It's called the Roundhouse because it's curved, it's circular, it faces Bayou Tahar. There is even a fallout shelter built into the house in 1958. I mean, this is the Khrushchev era. The Russians are going to launch a bomb from the satellites and Sputnik and things like that. And there is even like I say, there is a fallout shelter within the house with concrete beds and a tank, a concrete tank for water storage and that kind of thing. And Fred Berry here in the library took a bunch of digital photographs of the campus after Hurricane Ivan, and he saved them or uploaded them to the library drive, and we quickly grabbed them for the archive. And so it can become part of history. Now, all of these collections can be used and they can be looked at in our department. Right now, we have our appointments. We're only open by appointment only. But if you have a question or looking for a particular photograph, want to know if we might have something in an area, this is our website address for reference question. A lot of time we're not going to spend a great deal of time looking for a specific picture for you. Like somebody will say, "Oh, I'm looking for a view of St. John Cemetery from the air in 1930." We're not going to do that kind of search for you. We're going to say you need to come in and look through the cemetery picture file and other things, and because the weird thing about visual items is they're in the eye of the beholder. We get a lot of people saying, "I want a copy of every map showing Gulf Breeze on it." Well, that's just impossible. But the person, they see the picture they want, they go, oh, they know it. That's the visual image they want. And so it takes some time to do that. And then kind of tramping the old versus the new. I left the library one day a few years ago, and this car was parked outside on the green in front of the library, and I just had to get a photograph of this. I thought it was a perfect image of the day. Now, some people take some of the old photographs and they work with them, and so um, there is a mural downtown, and that was you taking this black and white picture and expanding it on it a little bit, been colorized. There's a guy selling a colorized poster of it online now, and so sometimes we see the picture marketed in our area. I'll leave you with probably what is the oldest photograph we know of in our area. This is 1845. In 1844, the U.S. Coast Guard found a man at sea in a whaling longboat with 7 escaped black slaves. His name was Jonathan Walker. They brought him back to Pensacola to the district court. He was charged with slave dealing. He was in prison downtown in Pensacola for about a year. He paid a fine. And before they released him, they branded his hand with 2 S's for slave stealer. Jonathan Walker returned to his home in Maine and New England. He went on the abolitionist circuit, preaching to various groups against slavery in the South and showing off his hand. He became so famous, John Greenleaf Whittier wrote a poem about him called The Man with the Branded Hand. And we didn't think anything more about it. There have been some illustrations. He also wrote a book. He wrote a book about his adventures in Pensacola. We have copies of that here, published in 1846. In the late 1990s, the Library of Congress received a collection of daguerreotype from a company, one of the earliest daguerreotype and photography studios in America. And among these pictures was this item of Jonathan Walker's hand, taken about 1844, 45, 46. We know it's in that period of time. It is probably the first photograph ever taken of a part of the human body, because photography, when it came out, people weren't quite sure what to make of photography. Many of the early photographs try to replicate art. They take pictures of flowers and settings and that kind of thing before people start thinking about taking pictures of battle scenes, of buildings, and things like that. But it's really one of the oldest photographs we know of in the area. And that's my talk today. And I'm going to stop sharing there. And if anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask about our photography collection. All right. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate all of you coming in today. We also have video, which is considered a visual medium, and we're busy trying to do those. All right. Thank you all very much for coming today, and I hope you learned a little bit about our collections here. Okay. Bye bye.